Hi, this is Kylie with Feminine Flow. I hope you're having a good day. I took a few weeks off and I went on a nice vacation 1 week, and I'm so happy to be recording again and getting back in the swing of it. So, today I wanted to talk about some of the spirituality traps that the dark global elite use to trap people into ways of thinking that will fall into this false matrix of control and keeps people away from what is actually true. So, three of the traps I'll mention is New Age spirituality. The second one is organized religion. And then the third one is popular culture. And I'll start with New Age because I feel like there's a lot of confusion between New Age beliefs and then more of the spirituality kind of concepts that I talk about. And I'll call that elevated consciousness. I think there's confusion between what is considered New Age and what isn't. And I've never heard it described or explained exactly. So I thought I would get into that here. I know when I first started my spiritual journey, this was a topic of confusion to me. I thought everything within the spirituality realm was considered New Age, but that is so incorrect. And now I totally see that these New Age ideas and this New Age movement is another way that the dark global elite try to confuse and control people. And it seems like it confuses people who are actually usually headed in the right direction with their spirituality, and something about spirituality really resonates and causes them to go down this path. But then one of the traps is this New Age spirituality and New Age way of thinking. And like many other things that the dark global elite have their hands in, they use a lot of resonating truths to get people hooked and into this way of thinking and this belief system, but then they'll slowly lead people astray or lead them astray in really subtle ways, but on the big picture are actually really important. But people might not realize that at first. And I think people get into New Age who actually have really good intentions. And like I said, start down the right path, but then don't realize the nuance between truth, this way of thinking about elevated consciousness and how our world works, how our universe works. They don't realize the subtle nuance between that and what these New Age belief systems are pushing. So they don't realize the nuance, think it's all the same thing. So then they just go down that path and then they're misguided. But like I said, I truly think everyone who goes down this path has good intentions actually. And maybe some people listening didn't even realize there was a difference here. So if you don't realize there's a difference, this is a great podcast episode to be listening to. It seems like a lot of people who might start going down this path and fall into this New Age spirituality trap, it is probably because they do deeply resonate with the spiritual or spiritual beliefs and they feel something is calling them there. And maybe they believe in God and believe in a higher power, but organized religion doesn't resonate with them and they just don't believe in following rules and sin and punishment and all of that stuff that comes with organized religion. So they turn away from that and start going down a spiritual path and seeking there. And then, like I mentioned, that's when New Age can trap some people. And one of the biggest differences between New Age beliefs and then the beliefs of this elevated consciousness way of thinking, the biggest thing I see is New Age really pushes that idea of I am God and that there's not a bigger power outside of you, that it's actually you. which is misguided. There's certainly higher power, God energy. It might not just be in the way that the Bible and organized religion is talking about. So I think this New Age says, hey, you are God. And I've heard people say, who follow these New Age beliefs, I heard it on TikTok, they said, you lose power when you pray to a God outside of yourself. That is so New Age, and that is exactly what I'm talking about here. I believe that is extremely misguided and completely false. And then another thing New Age pushes that is really different from the way of elevated consciousness thinking is that darkness doesn't exist. New Age really pushes that everything is love and light and that it all depends on you and your vibration. And if you are having bad things happen, it's all because of you and it's all because of your vibration. And when you're pushing that darkness doesn't exist, you're absolutely leaving out this whole concept that I talk about all the time, the dark global elite and what's actually going on this planet and why people are here and what we are doing here exactly. So that's very convenient for the dark global elite saying, hey, we don't exist. Darkness doesn't exist. It all depends on you. You're the God. You're determining everything. It's all on you. Darkness doesn't exist. So you can see how that is different. And yes, I talk a lot about how we do create our own reality based on our personal vibration and the vibration we're putting out into the quantum. But that's just a piece of it, as you know, if you've listened to my other podcast episodes. Yes, outside of this, that's how it all works and there's all freedom. But the dark global elite have put this false matrix of control on Earth. So, as you know, if you listen to my other episodes, we're not able to properly anchor in and access this higher dimensional energy of the dimensions 1 through 9. And when we're anchoring all of that in and accessing that freely, that's what causes what we archetypally call heaven, which is these other realms, I guess you could call it, or other experiences that are full bliss and full freedom. So, I don't know, it's layered here. There's a lot of nuance to it. And these new age beliefs, they will put out stuff that does resonate as true, but wording is so important how they word it, and I'll get into that a little later I'll give an example. But they'll just give out things that resonate as true, but slowly, subtly lead you down the wrong path. And for example, New Age beliefs, like I already mentioned, they say you are the God, you control your reality, which, I believe, yes, we do control our reality, but there's other things at play here, and our Earth matrix has been hijacked. So they're really trying to control us and manipulate us. So, yeah, they might be sharing some truth there that we do create our own reality, but that is not all, that's not the whole picture. And it seems like the new age going along with this, they'll put stringent and strict rules around some of the spiritual concepts, like how we do create our own reality. So then if things are going wrong, they'll blame it directly on you and say it's your fault. And I don't believe that exactly. And we shouldn't become obsessed with keeping a high vibration to the point that you feel so obsessed with it and rigid. That will turn people into obsession, and it totally takes away from the whole point of living a life of flow and a life of ease. So, another thing, if you are following with these new age beliefs and believe that darkness doesn't exist, and all there is light, and it's just up to you to control your reality, then you are totally open to these dark fourth dimensional beings messing with you. and they can totally mess with you and lead you down the wrong path. And there are a lot of spiritual practices like tarot cards or using divination that spiritual and people who follow this elevated consciousness belief they use, and new age people also use it. So this is all great, and people definitely should use and tap into your gifts, but you really need to learn how to use it appropriately and protect yourself. So if you go into some of these practices believing that darkness doesn't exist and you just start messing with it and you don't know how to properly protect yourself, then you could definitely get toyed with and they could mess around with you a little bit. If you start using some of these practices or you have spiritual gifts but don't know how to hone them or protect yourself exactly, and you don't believe the darkness exists, then you could unknowingly be communicating with or working with dark beings. So you never should just blindly connect. There are some things you need to do to absolutely protect yourself. And you need to be aware that there is darkness out there. Because if you are doing this and then these fourth dimensional dark beings are leading you down the wrong path and toying with you, at some point you may realize, oh my gosh, I've been working with dark. I've been led astray. This can cause absolute panic and scare you so much. And then when you're that scared, you may just denounce all of it. Say, I don't want to mess with any of it. It's all evil. It might completely shred everything you were believing. You may not know what to believe anymore. And it will cause a huge ego death. And this is where you could potentially be set up for another trap. I feel like a lot of the time when people go through that, they absolutely panic, get afraid, and they run into the arms of organized religion because that is the prevailing narrative when it comes to dark versus light and evil versus good. And they talk about demons and repenting, and they are against a lot of these different spiritual gifts and spiritual practices. So maybe it scares you so much that you go running into that, and that's another trap within itself. Because as you know, if you listen to my other podcast episodes, I get into how early Christianity was hijacked by the dark global elite. And they hijacked it in order to control and alter the true story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. And they were actually trying to teach this whole concept I've talked about, elevated consciousness. But it was hijacked in order to spread fear and control humanity. And this is a great trap because Jesus and Mary Magdalene, their truth and what they speak on, that resonates in the hearts of many. And it resonates because it's truth. But I talk about, this is how the dark global elite works. They take this resonating truth and mix in a lot of false information that leads us astray. So we don't reach that area of elevated consciousness where we understand what's actually going on. And that's a big part of this trap because in this modern day Christianity, Jesus and Mary Magdalene are tied to organized religion. So you may resonate with Jesus and Mary Magdalene and feel that in your heart. So you run to the doctrine that is tied to them, modern day Christianity, but even it has stuff in it that will lead you down the wrong path. I know, they really try to get us from every angle. And there's so much nuance in all of these concepts and topics. And sometimes it feels like you're swimming in this vast ocean of information and you dropped your diamond stud earring on the bottom. And you're trying to sift through all this junk and sand and find that diamond of truth within this vast, vast ocean of different information and different competing narratives and narratives that do have resonating truth, but then subtly lead you astray. It is certainly not easy, but I truly believe that seek and you shall find. And if you really pray about it, pray for discernment, pray for the truth, prayer definitely works. And praying for protection works. So definitely pray and use that all the time. I mean, you can constantly be praying about things, praying about help, praying for protection. It's truly great and it does work. But let's go back to modern day Christianity for a moment. So, say you get really afraid because you realize you've been messing with darkness when you didn't even believe in darkness before. So, you run to modern day Christianity. And modern day Christianity, it really denounces these spiritual connections and the spiritual gifts. So you may turn them off and ignore them completely. And the spiritual connection and spiritual gifts, if you have those, you have them for a reason. And it's definitely to share the truth. And I truly believe this truth is this whole concept of elevated consciousness. And that's actually how we connect to God. But yeah, so like I said, if you go through this, it could be extremely hard. Your beliefs can be absolutely ripped away from you and you can feel really, really lost. And at this point, you might not know what to believe. And this can be a huge ego death. It doesn't have to be a trap, though. You don't have to fall into denouncing it all and following organized religion. If you make it through this, it can be the biggest level up. And it can be a huge step towards really getting into your mission here and finding the truth. And I've heard some people talk about this as an initiation process, but this isn't initiation in an actual sense where you're being tested. But you could view it as that metaphorically, because if you go through that and you make your way out of that and you're closer to the truth, it's a huge, huge level up. Your angels and your guides, etc., they're never going to put you through anything to test you. Yes, you can view it metaphorically as a test, but they're not going to actually be putting you through this kind of thing. This whole narrative around tests is definitely one of those new age concepts and is just rooted in darkness. Your guides and your angels and your spirit team, if you want to call them that, they're absolutely loving and will never do that kind of thing. They will not do anything to you that feels like a test or it feels like someone's toying with you. If you feel this way, then you might be connecting with darkness instead of light. And if you go through all of that, you definitely come out knowing that yes, darkness is absolutely real. Because this is another thing that it seems like New Age teaches you. And if you hear someone talking about this, throw up your red flag. And this is when people talk about there's no such thing as light and dark. It's all neutral. And that nothing actually matters. There's no meaning in this life. It's only the meaning you give it. I've heard people on TikTok, certain very, very popular people talk about that. And that is just absolutely a red flag. And that tells me they are channeling a fourth dimensional dark being. But don't let it freak you out and don't let it scare. Just know we are the powerful beings. We are the divine ones. We have all the power. And they had to put this false matrix on earth in order to manipulate and control us, because if we knew our true power, it would be totally over for them. So just always remember that. And there's so much nuance to this. And there's a Bible verse that talks about how the path is narrow. And I totally agree that it is narrow because, like I said, it's like finding a little diamond stud earring in the vast ocean. There is truth. There is an absolute truth, and we just need to seek it. But it's not that hard because we just need to pray for discernment, pray for the truth, and pray for this to be unveiled to us and for us to be guided. And truly, if you pray for that and really start trying to seek, it will be unveiled to you and you will find the truth in the most awe inspiring ways. And it will truly feel so magical. So, yeah, the path is narrow, but not in the way usually interpreted by Christians and people who read the Bible. It's not like you have to behave so perfectly and follow all the rules and stay away from sin, and that's the narrow path. It's just that there's all of this competing information and people trying to hijack us, basically to control us. That's what it is. It's just, yes, there is truth, and finding that truth might seem like you're walking on a narrow path, but you can absolutely find it. And then with organized religion, there's also the people who are just born into that way of thinking. And like anything, if you are born into something and that's all you've known your whole life, it can be very brainwashing and it can be really detrimental and then hard to get away from those beliefs. Like if you are told all the time growing up that something is bad, even later on, if you start to go away from organized religion, you might still have that deep connection, deep thought, or deep trauma that's affecting you. Even logically, if you don't think that is true, it still will affect you sometimes. I hear this a lot with sex because with different organized religion, you're always taught growing up that that is so bad, that's a sin, and it's drilled into your head. And then even by the time you get married, you still might have issues around that. That feeling might not go away just because, oh, you're suddenly married. You might still have a lot of thoughts and feel really bad about yourself when you are doing that. And you might feel dirty or sinful when you do that. It can really be detrimental and really brainwash you. And it's interesting how we hear about all of these cults and we can be very judgmental about different cults and think that's so crazy. How'd you get into that? But then people don't back up and think about modern day Christianity and some of those beliefs. It's just more normalized and people grow up in it. So it's just so normalized and they don't question it. I say this a lot. I say this in other episodes. But if you are born into a prison and you don't have any benchmark or comparison, you might not even know, you won't even know that you're living in a prison. Whatever you grow up in, that's going to feel normal to you. So we really need to be aware of how we are raised and think about that critically and not just accept every idea and every belief that we were raised with. It's just interesting because you hear this. People are born in an organized religion and they say, well, my way's the right way. And if you don't believe this one specific way, you're going to hell. But then it's like, hello, back up. You believe that because you were born in this specific part of the world with this specific belief. Some people on the other side of the world have never even heard that belief system. It's just a little strange to me. I'm going to talk about this in my next episode, though, about judgment and humans and humanity. And I truly think all humans, their heart is connected to light. Their heart is connected to God and source energy. And humans truly do have good intentions. And humans do want to be good. So I'm definitely not saying judgment here when people just believe whatever they were raised in and they don't question it. They are literally trying to do what's right. They were programmed with that thought and that idea basically. So they're trying to do what's right. And that's what they have been taught is right. Yeah, sometimes I'm like, it's crazy, but I'm not judging the individual at all. I totally understand it and how people would fall into that way of thinking. I guess with it, I'm saying we should be more self critical in the way of dissecting our own beliefs and why we think that, how we got that way, instead of criticizing others. And we should be humble. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Before I move on to the next spiritual trap, now is a good time to talk about a book I really, really recommend. It's called Think Indigenous by Doug Goodfeather. And it is so good. I'm not going to get into specifics. If this resonates and you feel called to read it, definitely go read it. But it talks about the kind of thing I'm talking about here, this idea of elevated consciousness. And it does get into New Age a little bit and how it separates it. And when I first read this book, I was just blown away. It made a lot of sense. And that was one of the first books that separated this idea of elevated consciousness. I don't think it called it elevated consciousness, by the way, but it did separate this idea with New Age beliefs. And these ideas of elevated consciousness, they are not new at all. They go way, way back to indigenous Native Americans. So this is not a new concept at all. And that was so, so interesting to me. So if this resonates at all, definitely go get that book and read that book. I think you will really be interested and really blown away like I was. And that book is called Think Indigenous: Native American Spirituality in a Modern World. And it's by Doug Goodfeather. So now I'll get into the next trap, the third one. I already talked about New Age spirituality and organized religion, that kind of trap there. And now I'll talk about popular culture. So, popular culture, it's huge. This affects so many people because we're born into this and it's just taught as this is how things are, this is what we do. And we don't realize this is all a huge ploy for control, manipulation, programming, and our attention. This is the trap that affects the most people. And this affects the people who don't even believe in a higher power. And this might be because where they live, the prevailing narrative, the prevailing belief around God is organized religion. And when they start learning about that, it doesn't resonate at all. So then they just assume, okay, I guess there's no such thing as God. So it even affects those people. But then, like I mentioned, then there's the other people who do believe in God, that resonates, but organized religion doesn't resonate, so they go down spirituality path and then they're hijacked and trapped by New Age spirituality. So as you can see, I talk about it before, talk about it in other episodes, but the dark global elite really try to get us from all angles. So we just need to be cautious and pay attention and understand that the dark global elite is real. They are trying to hijack us, but don't let it cause fear. I talk about this all the time, but it's so, so important. Do not let them cause you any fear. We are the powerful ones. We're directly connected to God energy, to source energy. And once we know how to tap into our power, it's over for them. They aren't connected like we are. They're having to hijack us to harness our energy. They cannot get energy on their own. So please keep this in mind and never ever let any of this scare you. And also, on all of this note, before I get into popular culture, I do not think we will ever have all of the answers. But it's so important to seek and live in the light and be tapped into your heart and be humble. I'm sharing all of this, but I know I don't have all the answers and I don't think I ever will. And same with other people sharing things on social media. So I think it's so important to keep this in mind. And like I mentioned, just seek and you shall find. I truly believe that. And it will take you down this amazing, wonderful path. And you'll just be so amazed at how it all unfolds. Like, truly, we should be aiming at being our own guru. We shouldn't be putting our full trust in listening to things people say online. We should really be seeking ourselves and eventually being our own guru and knowing these truths ourselves. We all have the power and the connection to God to do that. But it definitely is a journey and it's a process. But you need to have a pure heart and seek and you shall find. That's truly what I think. And just like I talked about, know that darkness is real, but we can protect ourselves in different ways and truly believe in the power of prayer. Okay, but back to popular culture. So, yeah, this culture is literally ran by the dark global elite and dark fourth dimensional beings. And we're the ones with power. They don't have any power, so they have to control and manipulate us subtly so we don't realize what's going on, so they can harness our power so they stay in control of this false matrix they set up on Earth. And they try to control us from every angle in very subtle ways in hopes that we don't catch on. Because, like I mentioned, we're the ones with power. Once we see what's really happening here and we band together, it's over for them. And if you've listened to my other episodes, you already have more detail on this, especially the episode about the dark global elite and their pyramid of control. It's totally falling right now, but I get into this episode on how it's all set up and the details there. And yes, the dark pyramid of control, it literally is connected to everything in our modern day society, from Hollywood and entertainment, the music we're listening to, the movies we're watching, the TV shows. It's all subtle programming to control us. Even the huge industries like our food industry and the pharmaceutical industry. And also why alcohol is such a huge part of our culture. It's all part of their plan to control us. They want to just herd society and humanity like sheep and totally control us. And with some of this, once you recognize the subtle influences, it's okay to partake in moderation. Some of it you just can't get around, really. But acknowledging it and knowing how it's affecting you, it takes a lot of the power away. So a lot of this is okay in moderation once you realize what's going on, because some of it is just nearly impossible to completely avoid. But here's where we should not have moderation, and that is alcohol and party drugs. Those are two things that we should absolutely not even do in moderation. And I mentioned this in another episode. If you're interested, go listen to the episode about fourth dimensional influences and how they subtly try to control you. And it says alcohol is a big one. And I get way more in depth in that episode. But if you haven't listened to that yet, you might be thinking, oh, I know it's a huge part of our culture and it's hugely popular in society. But truly, this is something we should not even have in moderation. Go listen to that episode and you'll hear more about that. But yeah, all of these ways that the dark global elite try to control us through the popular culture and this dark pyramid of control they have, this is also a trap. And this is probably a very clear trap. Well, this is like one of those traps that you don't even realize it's a trap because you're so used to it. You're just born into this society and you don't even question if it's normal or not. But just be very aware that another one of these huge spiritual traps of the dark global elite is all of these things of popular culture. Think about it. Even some of these huge musicians and artists, people follow them like it's a cult and like it's their spiritual belief. People get so obsessed. And that is very weird if you think about it. And it's very weird thinking about people screaming and crying when they see these different celebrities and musicians. It's very weird. And this is absolutely one of these spiritual traps. And this is something so normalized to us because we are just raised in this culture that we're almost immune to thinking it's weird because it's so normalized to us. So, this is something we really need to take a step back from and look at it with different eyes because this is absolutely a crazy spiritual trap as well. I just wanted to talk about some of the different spiritual traps that the dark global elite set up in order to lead us astray. And like I mentioned, it's the New Age spirituality. I talk about how people get into that trap. Organized religion, I talked about how people get into that trap. And part of that one is just being born into it. So being programmed from birth, essentially. And this goes along with pop culture as well. We're just born into this society, and from the moment we're born, all growing up, we live in this world with a specific culture that's popular, and that's what we just accept a lot of the time. And all of those are big spirituality traps, all set up by the dark global elite to control us. So, yeah, that's a lot. They try to get us from all angles, but we can really pray for discernment, seek and we shall find, and know that prayer is really powerful. And yes, it might be a narrow road, but we can absolutely do that and we can absolutely find the truth. And once you start asking for the truth, praying for discernment, I really do think it will unfold to you in such a miraculous, awe-inspiring, amazing way because I just think that's how these things work. On earth, we just have these blinders on and don't realize that there's so much magic all around us. And actually, where we come from is so magical and so amazing. One more thing I want to add, it goes along with new age beliefs and people not believing in the dark, so they open themselves up to it unknowingly, and they can be working with dark beings on accident, even if they have really good intentions. This is related, but if you're getting energy work done by other people, it is so, so important to understand their beliefs and if they believe in dark or not. You really want to avoid getting any sort of energy work done by someone who doesn't know how to protect you and protect themselves. And if they don't believe in the dark, then they're opening themselves up and then you up to this dark energy. So you really want to be careful about this. And when I first started getting into the spiritual stuff, I went and got Reiki done. And it was all fine. It felt really great. But you just have to be careful. I don't think I would go get that done now just because all of this stuff I know now. I don't think I would want to put that power in another person, not knowing what kind of energy they're pulling in. But you can absolutely look into quantum techniques, quantum healing techniques, and quantum clearing techniques that you do yourself. So then you know if you're protecting yourself or not. And always, before doing this sort of stuff, definitely pray and ask for energetic protection and pray to God and pull in that light God energy. So, yeah, I mentioned, but the power of prayer is huge. So, always you can protect yourself via prayer. But yeah, just be careful about who you're going to, which energy practitioners, and make sure you know them and understand their beliefs before you work with them at all. Because some people, if they don't know that there is light versus dark and there is evil out there, then maybe they're not working with light and they're doing this unknowingly. And they probably have the best of intentions, honestly, but just don't realize it. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that. I thought that was pretty important when we're on this whole topic of the different spiritual traps. And duality here, Reiki's not bad, energy work's not bad, but like I mentioned, you just really want to know what kind of energy that person's working with and tapping into. But if you've gotten Reiki without knowing the background or the beliefs of the practitioner, don't let this scare you. Truly, it's okay. Just know this moving forward. And you can definitely look up some self quantum clearing techniques and healing techniques. Use your protection prayer and you can clear your own energy. And if you are into this kind of thing, I actually do recommend just doing it yourself. Just researching and learning more about self quantum clearing and healing techniques. That's what I would recommend. So you aren't relying or trusting, putting your trust in someone else's energy and what kind of energy they're working with or channeling in. Like I said, I truly think they probably have really good intentions, but they just don't know this. So that's why I recommend just learning this yourself and doing it yourself. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and give my podcast 5 stars. I would really, really love that and really appreciate it. And like always, share with a friend or a loved one, someone you think this might resonate with. And I love you all and have a great week.